2026, and our dear friend Larry Johnson is here with us. Welcome, Agni.
I'm back with my favorite Iranian, German, Brazilian personality.
How's everything, Larry?
Hey, we're just watching. Is the world going to blow up?
Yeah.
We're in a situation where it looks like the Saudis and the Qataris they hold the veto on whether or not this war is going to expand, or if it's going to, be brought to an end with Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz. So I'm hopeful that the Saudis will recognize that there's not a viable path forward if they pursue additional attacks against Iran or allow the United States to carry out attacks. It's going to be devastating for them. I think Iran is feeling actually more confident with each passing day, in part because of the efforts of Russia and China to build this new security architecture. It's not getting a lot of attention around the world, but there is definite activity on that front. That's not just idle talk. It's talk backed with action. So we'll see. This week, I believe this week could be one of the most decisive weeks in the entire 12-week conflict.
Larry, before getting to the conflict and the issues and these sort of proposals on both sides, we had a huge explosion in Israel, which we've seen the footage of that. Here is the footage.
Well, okay, let's be precise. You and we didn't have that explosion, boy, but Israel did. Yeah, when I saw that, someone said, "Oh, this is a test." What kind of test is that? Hey, Nima, I'm going to pour gasoline on myself and see if I can light a match and see what we'll call it a test.
Exactly.
Explosion of fire. Yeah, this. You read me Andrei Matianov's take, and it sounds like he got some better information than I had access to. But that this entire plant facility was blown up, and it wasn't done by an attack by Iran. Rather, they did something wrong in handling the explosives that were being produced inside that factory. And boy, apparently it wiped it off the face of the earth. So that's significant. And I surmised my hypothesis about why this happened is that Israel had decided to try to upgrade or expand one of its weapon systems or push to get a new air defense system out because they know that a new attack on Iran is coming. And that they were being, these folks are being pressured to hurry. We need to hurry. And sometimes when you rush certain things like that, accidents can happen. That's appeared to be what happened. But, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. But that was not your normal, it was not your normal explosion. We had 5 weeks of missile attacks by Iran. And we never, ever saw any missile hit that caused that kind of explosion and that massive mushroom cloud that came up out of that factory. So this was significant.
Yeah. Larry, the region that this explosion happened is here on this map. And as you mentioned, Andrei Martyanov said that this is a factory in Tomir. And he says the surrounding areas were destroyed. The factory produced engines for almost all of Israel's missiles, including boosters for Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, and even for satellites. I think this is going to, influence each and every sector in Israel.
Yeah, no.
Nobody's talking about it, by the way.
Yeah, well, when you get a disaster like that, it's you don't want to necessarily go around and advertise it. but it does appear to be quite significant. That if that's where they develop all the rocket motors, et cetera, well, you're going to have rocket fuel around to test those motors. And again, this one thing said this was a test, but the only kind of tests we've seen like that was when we were testing nuclear bombs or atomic bombs back in the 50s, and they'd blow up like the Bikini Atoll. And there's a test, that island's gone. But I don't think this was, that kind of test.
Larry, the new proposal, two proposals, one from the United States, which was totally the opposite of what Iran has sent them. And the response from Iran, again, a 14-point plan. It seems that in the new plan, I don't know about the rumors, some rumors say that they were talking about the nuclear program of Iran in the new proposal, but not about the nuclear weapon, not about the nuclear program of Iran. It seems that they have at some point or 2 points about the Iran is not pursuing any sort of program that leads to achievement of nuclear weapons. That's something of that sort. I don't know if the rumors are right, but we have the two communications, the proposal coming in and out, and on the other hand, we've seen the buildup in terms of the military buildup and the way that the United States is preparing for war. And Donald Trump said the clock is ticking. How possible is that to have a new round of war?
Oh, it's very the U.S. plans are locked and loaded. It's just a matter of is Trump going to give the execute order? That's all they're waiting for. So the holdup, I believe, is with the Saudis and Qataris and Kuwaitis, because we saw 2 weeks ago when the Saudis and Kuwaitis told the United States, no, you're not going to use our airspace for your Project Freedom. Not going to happen. And Trump had to call it off. He said, "Oh, we're pausing it." Okay, good pause. It's been shut down for 2 weeks now. It's more than a pause. It was canked, to put some military vernacular. So the decision now to restart the war. The only viable option for the United States is air power, and let me explain why the Saudis in particular can derail this by not allowing the KC-135s, which are based in Prince Saud Air Base, PSAB. I found that out the other day by talking to one of my neighbors whose son is a pilot, flies KC-135s, and kids based at Prince Saud Air Base. And they told his dad, man, this situation is terrible. We don't have protection. It's just, it's awful. But the reason the United States needs that is I think most of the F-35s, the combat jets that will carry JASSM missiles or Tomahawk missiles and launch those, they're based in Jordan and in Israel. Well, the distance from Mawafaq al-Salti Air Base in Jordan to Riyadh is 819 miles. The combat radius of those F-35 is about 550 miles. So, you're 300 miles shy. You're going to run out of gas before you even get to Riyadh. So that means those planes have to be refueled at least one. They're going to be refueled at a minimum 2 times, and maybe more in order to get them. So let's say you're going to fly to the coast, to the middle of the Persian Gulf, and you're going to launch your JASSM or Tomahawk from there, because you launch away from. They're not going to fly over Iran and drop bombs. The odds are they'll get shot down, but they do the standoff, and Iran has less protection against that. Remains to be seen if Iran's made any improvements towards defeating JASSM and Tomahawk missiles. But they got to be refueled, and then because let's say the total distance from Mawafaq to the point of the Persian Gulf is 1,000 miles. Okay, right there, that's 2 air refueling and 1,000 miles back. So those planes would have to be refueled as many as 4 times per plane. And if you're launching 20 aircraft or 30 aircraft, let's say it's 20. That's 80 refuelings that these planes have to take care of, and so it becomes a complex logistics operation. So if the Saudis say, no, you're not using our air bases to refuel that aircraft as they can attack Iran. No, we'll stop in that. The attack doesn't happen. So that's what, I don't know what we'll know probably by Wednesday or Thursday at the latest, if the Saudis have made that kind of decision or not. Because if they decided to go along with the United States, then I fully expect that the renewed attacks on Iran could start as soon as tomorrow. But if they don't have the air logistics sorted out and access to fly over Saudi or Qatari airspace, then it could be put on hold. And the longer it's on hold, the more opportunity for the diplomatic solution. And what I mean by that is what China and Russia are proposing. In fact, the United States is actually sort of irrelevant to it, because the Chinese and Russian proposal is to bring together Turkey, Saudis, and Iran into a strategic regional alliance that they would agree to protect the interests of all the countries in that region, except for Israel. I mean, it leaves Israel on the outs. But the fundamental premise in that new security architecture is the United States has got to get the hell out of the Persian Gulf, remove its bases, remove its personnel. Now, that's already happened in a de facto manner, just by virtue of the military activity during the first 5 weeks of the war. Now it is, it's the United States just doesn't go back out and reoccupy some of these bases because they've been virtually destroyed.
Larry, two important things happened so far. One of them is these two secret Israeli bases in Iraq.
Yeah,
and I assume that they have nothing to do with Iraq itself. It was all about Iran, how they can use them against Iran with some sort of those riots, protests, and making some sort of turmoil in Iran, and then helping the United States from outside and from inside. And when it comes to the reality of Iraq, if you build two bases in Iraq, it's totally against the international law. How is that gonna? It's not about Gaza. It's not about the West Bank. It's about Iraq. It's far away from Israel.
Yeah. You mean Israel's concerned about international law? And your evidence for that is nothing. Look, I was in a conversation with Mario Nafal yesterday because he was saying, "Hey, you've had these drone attacks that came from the West. It wasn't coming from Israel or from Iran." And I said, "Well, gee, is it possible that Israel could have a secret base in Iraq and launch drones from there to try to make it look like it's something from an Iranian proxy, when in fact it's Israel trying to provoke, let's call it a false flag?" And you go, yeah, there's a possibility there. So
he tries to understand, by the way, little by little.
Yeah.
Because many people are criticizing, let's put it this way, Larry, many people are criticizing you and me. They said to me that you two are going on his podcast, but no problem with that. We have the differences, but the guy is totally open to understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, he's not a rigid ideologue.
Yeah.
And he's not some passionate propagandist.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got his own views, and I attribute, he's a young guy. He doesn't have a lot of experience. And so, but he honestly expressed what he thinks. And then when I disagree with him, I do it politely. And he listens. And sometimes, he has a change of heart. So, but as we were talking, he thought, well, was this possible that Iran was, trying to restart? And I'm saying, Iran right now holds the cards. They're in a superior position because I'll call it playing the victim, by not initiating contact. You could very well justify that they could have taken preemptive strikes. They had the intelligence. They knew the U.S. was coming. They knew Israel was coming. So they could have launched some preemptive strikes. They didn't. Yes. Did they suffer damage as a result? Yes, absolutely. You can, in fact, say maybe those schoolgirls would not have been killed had Iran launched a preemptive strike. That's one possibility. But by adopting that role, they've made it very, very clear to the world they're the victim here. We didn't start this. We were not using military force against Israel or the United States. We've only done it in self-defense. And it is, in that regard, they've acquired, what I say, the moral high ground. And it's bolstered their support from countries like China and Russia. So again, they recognize there's all this buildup and energy on the part of the U.S. and Israel to renew the attacks. And I don't see Iran lashing out in advance. They're ready. They're going to retaliate, but they're not going to initiate. So that's where I saw these attacks on, the apparent drone attack on a nuclear facility in United Arab Emirates. I think it's a false flag. It's a attempted provocation back, by Israel to try to provoke. They want this war to get going because they still believe somehow they can defeat Iran, and they can't, but they still believe it.
You know what's amazing to me? That Israel says that to UAE, you are my best friend, you're everything to me, but they're hitting right and left. Just slapping them.
Oh,
it's just the way, because they said Netanyahu said that he went to UAE during the war. Then they said it wasn't just only Netanyahu, the head of Mossad, the head of Shin Bet, IDF chief of staff. They were all in that meeting.
Yeah.
MBZ. And then they tried to do, I would argue some of those attacks during the war were Israeli attacks on UAE.
Yeah. No,
I
wouldn't rule that out. Yeah, it is. Look, the Intercept just put out an article about the Emirati ambassador to the United States. Oh my God. He makes Hugh Hefner of the Playboy Empire look like a Benedictine monk. This guy is really a sexual predator, a hedonist, a trafficker. And, at the same time, they claim to try to impose certain restrictive Muslim practices. So-called Muslim practices and restricting interaction between men and women. It's a level of hypocrisy that is just staggering once you begin to comprehend what's been going on. United Arab Emirates is a real outlier because particularly Dubai. It is completely emblematic of everything that's sick and wrong with the West. Ostentatious displays of wealth up against appalling levels of poverty and deprivation on the part of workers who have to support that lifestyle. Consumption culture. And we're not just talking about food and alcoholic beverages, the sexual deviancy, it was celebrated there. And, this has been one of the consequences of this war with Iran. That whole lifestyle is being threatened, undermined, destroyed. So, I can see from the Iranian standpoint that there is absolutely zero empathy with the United Arab Emirates. Maybe with some of the sheikhs within the sort of Emirati collective, because it's not just one. There are several emirs. Not all of them share the same vision, but Iran is serious about creating a new security arrangement in the Gulf. And you and I were talking off air before you came on with the new X site that the Persian Gulf, or PSGA is it called?
Yeah.
The Persian Strait Gulf Authority or something. So they're setting up a formal mechanism for controlling the traffic that comes in and out of the Strait of the Persian Gulf. And the flow of that traffic is essential to the world's economy. And as long as this U.S. blockade persists, it takes Iran off the hook, because it's not Iran that's hindering the flow of those goods. It's the United States. Crazy.
Yeah. And it's called, Larry, PGSA.
Persian Gulf
Strait Authority.
Yeah. Okay, Persian Gulf Strait Authority. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification.
They have no account.
Too many acronyms to remember.
Exactly. We have a lot, by the way, here in Brazil.
Yeah.
Larry, when it comes to the targets and list of the targets they have on both sides, it seems that they have updated their targets. At least on the Iranian side, we've learned a lot. They're talking about how they can hit back if the United States attacks Iran again. And what do we know about the United States list of targets? And what are the main points that they want to achieve by those targets?
I don't know what the targets are. All I know is the targets were selected and are plugged in, ready to go as of at least 5 weeks ago. So it's not like they're now scrambling, let's come up with some targets. No, they've already got those. Now, this is where it gets interesting. If the Israelis and or the United States decide to try to attack Iran's power grid, I'm sure they can knock out portions of that in the country. But Iran, as you know, is a big, big country. And there's not just one central node that you take that out and the whole country falls apart. No, absolutely not. Just the opposite. Whereas Israel is vulnerable because of its small size relative to Iran. There, you can knock out 2 or 3 nodes, and all of a sudden you're going to put that country into darkness. And Israel can't survive with that kind of situation. And up to this point, Iran had avoided attacking those sites. So it really, it depends on what Israel and the United States decide to attack in Iran, because Iran will retaliate in kind. So if they go after power grids, then Iran's going to take out the power grids in Israel. If they go after any more of the refineries, and it won't be just in Israel. I mean, it will be in the Persian Gulf. Right now is like if you take out some of the power producing capabilities in Saudi Arabia or Qatar right now, all of a sudden you're going to have a human catastrophe on your hands, because the daily temperatures are soaring well into the 100 degrees Celsius range. So it gets hot. And if you don't have electricity, you don't have air conditioning, you may not have water purification. So a whole number of cascading effects that would compel people to have to start leaving the area. And, and I think that's another consideration that's in the back of the mind of the Saudis and Qataris, that, they know that the United States cannot protect them from Iranian retaliation. So therefore, as long as they don't get involved with the fight, they don't have anything to worry about, but except the possibility of an Israeli false flag, to have them attacked in a way that they think, it's Iran, so we got to retaliate, or we have to cooperate.
Yeah. I think, Larry, there is a concept within the Iranian sort of strategy which is related to Shia Muslim, which is about water. in the Imam Hussein, which is so important in the culture of Shia Muslim, he was suffering in that battle they had. He was suffering from this water shortage. That's why Iran never attacks desalination, in my opinion, plants or desalination infrastructures in these countries. Maybe it would be the last target on the part of Iranians. But if they attack power grids in Iran, they're going to attack the power grids in these countries, as you just mentioned. But desalination plants is going to be the last of the last targets, because that's part of the culture, that's part of the Shia Muslim culture. And they don't go that far, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and the fact of the matter is that both through the Chinese and Russian intervention behind the scenes, that there are communications and talks going on between the Saudis and Iranians, as well as with the Qataris and the Kuwaitis. I'm not sure about the Emiratis. I think Iran is much more skeptical about having any positive diplomatic contacts with them. And the hope is that if they can get the rest of the Gulf united, the Saudis, Kuwaitis, and Qataris come on board, then the Emiratis is going to have to realize, hey, the train's leaving the station, everybody else is on board, and we're not. We don't want to be left behind. So they may have that would give them an incentive to reverse their current policy, which is seen as being willing to acquiesce to Israeli demands.
Larry, is Israel prepared? And how prepared is Israel for the war? And is that going to be the United States? Because there are Donald Trump is talking about two options. One of them is attacking Iran. The other one would be, the plan they had to open up the Strait of Hormuz, the Project Freedom. And they're going to escalate. They're going to do something about it, opening up the Strait of Hormuz. And how about the United States going after that Project Freedom again instead of attacking Iran?
Yeah, I don't,
And what Israel has to offer the United States with that concept?
Yeah, Israel doesn't have a lot to offer. They are, as we talked about our friend Professor Jiang. Oh, Israel doesn't need anybody. It's this regional power. It builds its own bombs and flies its own planes. And no, it doesn't. It's dependent upon the United States. So to the extent that the United States comes back in and basically empowers Israel to continue to carry out attacks, they'll hit targets. The attacks will be carried out via long distance, the Tomahawk and the JASSMs. Remember, the JASSM has an effective distance up around 500 miles. So if you're 100 miles off the coast of Iran, you fire it, it's going to go 400 miles inside. So you can reach a lot of locations. But it's not just a matter of blowing things up. That even if you destroy a target on the ground, how does it affect the ability of the government to actually rule, to control resources, to retaliate? And that's where Israel has its limitations, because it is not. If Israel was left to its own devices to do this, it could not fight and sustain this war. Just can't do it. It's entirely dependent upon the United States. So there is, the meetings that took place, conversation between Trump and Bibi Netanyahu yesterday. Yeah. Again, I think they're trying to figure out, okay, how far did we go? What did we do? When did we launch? Those are all questions. But part of the unknown is, will the Saudis go along with it? Will the Qataris go along with it or not? That remains to be seen.
We didn't hear about any sort of conversation between Donald Trump and Saudis or the government in Qatar. Donald Trump himself said in his latest interview that the war is because we wanted to help Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all GCC countries. But the communication is just between him and Benjamin Netanyahu. None of these countries, it seems to, at least we haven't heard about any sort of communication or talks between the two head of states, if I can put it this way. The Crown
Right.
Prince of Saudi Arabia and Donald Trump, for example.
Yeah, no, it's there's no doubt that the United States is completely beholden, if not under the control of the Zionist lobby. And the other sort of a backstory here will be what happens tomorrow, Tuesday, in a congressional primary in Kentucky for Thomas Massie, who has called for registering AIPAC under FARA as a foreign lobbyist, which it absolutely should be registered as such. The Zionist supporters, all these outsiders, these Israelis, including Miriam Adelson, who is an Israeli. She's not really an American. She's an Israeli. That's who she. That's where her loyalty goes first. They poured millions of dollars. There has never been an election in the history of the United States where this much foreign money has been poured in against one candidate. If Massie loses, it's going to show the power of foreign money. Yeah. But if Massie survives, and this is rejected, then that is going to send a devastating message to Trump, and it's going to, all of his attempts to attack Massie and smear Massie, they'll blow up in his face. I'm hoping that happens. I really do. That, and I know Massie's opponent, Ed Galron. I first became acquainted with Ed Galron 29 years ago when we were involved in. He was an active duty Navy SEAL at the time. He was the exercise coordinator for a U.S. military exercise that I worked on that was held actually in Jacksonville, Florida, of all things. Then I ran into him again a few years later in Panama as he and his family were leaving the country. And I liked Ed, but he's just allowed himself to be used as a complete tool of the Israelis. And I find that shameful on his part.
So far, they spent something like $10 million.
Oh, I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that. I thought it was approaching like 20 million. It's some crazy number.
Not just the money against Massie, it's about Donald Trump himself. Pete Hegseth. We had the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, going against, attacking Thomas Massie. They're doing everything to remove him.
I hadn't heard that. So did Vance came out and attacked Massie? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, he attacked him. He said that Thomas Massie voted against each and every resolution that we wanted to pass, and he's against us. He's against the party. He has to be removed from power.
Yeah, well, shit. Then fuck Vance. I had held out some hope that he could have a representative, a moderate, an alternative to Trump. He's just another tool. So
there is no future for J.D. Vance, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he's toast. He's toast. He has. He's chosen the dark side.
Yeah. Larry, when you look at the Russia and China today, we know that Putin announced that he's going to be in New Delhi in India in September.
Oh, okay.
BRICS.
Oh, well, yeah, for the BRICS summit. Yeah. Right.
They're going to be there. Donald Trump had a meeting with Donald Trump had a meeting with Xi Jinping, and this Wednesday we're going to have Vladimir Putin visiting China.
Actually, Tuesday he arrives.
He arrives.
He arrives in about 10 hours, 12 hours.
Yeah.
Into China.
The meeting going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday?
I think he arrives on Tuesday. Maybe he arrives late in the day, but the meetings will be on Wednesday.
Yeah. I would assume they're going to talk about the situation with the energy, Larry, because right now IEA chief warned commercial oil stock could last only weeks amid Hormuz closure. Mm-hmm. And what is the nature of the talks? What is the policy on the part of Russia, China? Are they concerned about the crisis with energy all around the world, or they're basically concerned about what's going on with the case of Donald Trump and his administration and their policies toward Russia and China, or how important is the Middle East for them?
Well, no, I look, I think the Chinese, we know that the Chinese and Russian have been coordinating on this new security architecture in the Persian Gulf, and they're both dead serious about this. They want to promote not necessarily a military alliance, but an alliance that is it's sort of a three-legged stool that it's anchored by Turkey, the Saudis, and the Iranians. Now, instead of having it focused on a Sunni versus Shia model, they'll have it as an Islamic model, which embraces both Sunni and Shia theologies. But the concept is that they will be the guarantors of security and push the United States out, and that is going to be a real shocker for the Trump administration in D.C. because they become accustomed to just using these countries there as our vassals. We can do what we want. They have to follow us. We're too powerful. They need our dollars. That kind of thing. Because I keep emphasizing this point, and I apologize. People get tired of hearing me repeat it. But there are basically two pillars that are undergird the U.S. Hegemonic role, being the king of the hill in the world. One is that the United States could finance its deficits on the back of foreign countries, that other countries would always buy U.S. debt, always invest in U.S. treasuries, regardless of what was going on in the world. So the United States always had that as a sort of a guarantee. We could run up deficits as we are. We're approaching $40 trillion right now. But other countries would buy our treasury bills. Then the second, and related to that, was the petrodollar, that any transactions in international commerce, especially in purchase of oil, you have to do it with dollars. If you don't do it with dollars, you don't buy it. That was the belief. Well, that's come unraveled. So we're seeing on both fronts that there is a move away from the petrodollar. It's not overwhelming yet, but the Chinese yuan is beginning to take a larger and larger share of the market in terms of purchases of oil. And the Russians have declared, hey, we're going to purchase with Chinese yuan, or if you want to buy our oil, pay with yuan. That is, one of the things I'm sure that Putin and Xi will be discussing, how they can continue to pursue and expand this project, because China also has been instrumental in setting up an alternative to the SWIFT system with CIPS, the cross-border interbank payment system. So you get away from the petrodollar, where you have alternatives, so that Brazil's buying oil with the yuan, the same with Russia, etc. Then you got the debt. And instead of China buying more, they're selling it off. The Japanese are selling it off. So all of a sudden, the United States is unable to sell the bonds. It's got the bonds for sale, but nobody's buying. And if they don't buy, you're not bringing cash into the U.S. monetary system. And so then that sets the stage for a recession on the part of the United States, where it no longer can finance its deficit, or unless we borrow against ourselves. So those are the two things that work, and I'm sure that's part of the strategic discussion that Putin and Xi will be engaged in.
Is Donald Trump going to sign that document to send more weapons to Taiwan? It's more than $11 billion, dollars. And I know that one of the main concerns on the part of Chinese government in this sort of visit that they had, they were talking about the case of Taiwan. But Donald Trump and the Trump administration, it's not about the Trump administration. The United States is not going to give up on Taiwan. And because it's a big issue, by the way, it's not just for Republican, for both parties in the United States. And how is that going to help Donald Trump? Or is there something, some sort of secret deal between Donald Trump and Xi with the case of Taiwan, and somehow China helping the United States in the Middle East? I ask this question because we hear these rumors from our audience. I want you to address that. That's not my question. Go ahead.
The United States is engaged in a fraud. Hey, Nima, how would you like to buy a Lamborghini from me? I need $50,000 from you up front, and I'll get you that Lamborghini. And then you're gonna say, well, where's the Lamborghini? Oh, I don't have it yet, but I will. So I'm selling you something I don't have. And in this case, the United States is offering to sell Taiwan weapons it does not have. It doesn't have inventories of these sitting around that it can, like Patriot, PAC-3 interceptors for Patriot missile batteries, or THAAD missiles for that terminal high altitude area defense interceptor. It doesn't have ample supplies of JASSMs or cruise missiles or, the Tomahawks, because it still has to make them. But to make them, they need, and we're back to what we, I think, talked about earlier, rare earth minerals. Without those rare earth minerals, the United States can't produce those weapons. And if you can't produce them, you can't deliver them. But nonetheless, we're offering them for sale. So that's why I see the Chinese sitting back saying, okay, go ahead, sign the deal. They're not going to get upset because they know that they're sitting on the rare earth minerals, and they're not sending any to the United States. So the United States can sign all these imaginary deals at once, but it does not have the ability to actually produce it. That's the key.
There is an interesting country, Larry, when it comes to that security architecture. In my opinion, is a very interesting, sort of role that they're playing right now is Pakistan. Many people were arguing that India could play that role, but Pakistan is playing that. They have an agreement, military agreement with Saudi Arabia. They have a very good relationship with Iran. They connected with China. They have good relationship with Russia. We had, their prime minister telling Russia, saying to Vladimir Putin, we want to have a better relationship with Russia. Their mindset is toward the east, not toward the west, as India is today. And how are they growing their influence in the region, or they're helping the region to be more stable? I'm talking about the Pakistani government. And
Pakistan is the pointy end of the spear for China. So the emergence of Pakistan as the major intermediary between the United States and Iran has been at the behest of and in coordination with the Chinese. And at the same time, the Pakistanis are keeping the Russians informed as well. So, Pakistan's they're a major player here. And to that extent, they have a security agreement in place with Saudi Arabia already. Now the question is, who are the Pakistan going to protect the Saudis against? And I think a case it can be actually the United States. Now, it's true that Iran launched attacks against the Saudis after the Saudis allowed their air bases, both the PSAB and KF, the King Saud or King Fahd, KFAB, the King Fahd Air Base, were used to launch attacks on Iran, and Iran retaliated. But, Iran really, in some respects, looking back on it now, I think that they pulled their punches against the Saudis. because they weren't really looking to completely devastate the Saudis. And as long as I think I think this is in part because both there's pressure from China, pressure from Russia, pressure conveyed via Pakistan to try to get the Saudis and Iranians completely united now against the United States, which if that happens, then there's not going to be a renewed war. That's the good news.
Where are we with the Abraham Accord, Larry?
Dead. It's going. It's kaput. There's no future, no hope for the Abraham Accord. That's done. It's been proved that it's not viable at all.
And nobody seems to care anymore about that because nobody's talking about it. Donald Trump, before coming, he said, "I'm gonna revive the Abraham Accord," and that's gone. That's totally gone right now, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. No, it's it's done, and so the way forward is the ultimate solution will be that this new security architecture gets up and running, and the U.S. is effectively pushed out of the Persian Gulf. And this is where the UAE is sort of the fly in the ointment, because Jared Kushner and in particular, there's a lot of investment, speculative money put into the United Arab Emirates, particularly through Dubai. So they're working at their own personal economic interests, not in the interest of the United States.
Israeli media reported that they're in deep problem when it comes to manpower. They see and with the ongoing operations in the southern part of Lebanon, how are they going to be able to occupy the regions that they're somehow claiming that it's going to be part of Israel? They're going to send the settlers in the southern part of Lebanon. We had Smotrich, we had Ben-Gvir talking about it. And who's going to go there to the southern part of Lebanon? These settlers, are they going to be able to convince them? Because the northern part of Israel is experiencing the same thing.
Right.
The settlers are not going to get back to the northern part, but right now they're talking about southern part of Lebanon.
Well, Israel's between 8 million and 10 million people, depending. The country its population had increased to around 10 million, but with the start of the war on October 7th, 2023, a number of people bailed out of the country. So you look at the size of the Israeli armed forces right now. So they're reservists. So you don't have a big standing army. You have the reservists that make up the bulk of the force. I think last number I saw, they had activated like 300,000. That is the size. If you look at like the size of the army in Turkey, that's the size of their army. So I think I was just looking up while we're talking just to make sure. Yeah, so the peak mobilization in the wake of the October 7th attack was they activated 300 to 360,000 reservists. Now, since then they've gone down, they've dropped down much lower. But when you look at total capability, Israel total number is like 400,000. So if you're going to conduct a military operation in Gaza, and using ground forces, and a military operation in southern Lebanon, and ground forces, and a military operation in Syria, you stretch their assets beyond what they're capable of. I mean, look, The United States, the current size of our army is 452,000. And we got a population of 310 million, 320 million to draw from. Israel's trying to put 400,000 in action out of a population of 8 million. Sorry, that doesn't. Those numbers just don't work.
Larry, do you see Turkey coming in? Because we had, you mentioned since the situation in Gaza, this war started on Gaza, they destroyed everything in Gaza, in the West Bank, and right now in Lebanon. We've heard about Turkey somehow sending the Azeri oil or gas to Israel, which is significant, by the way, 40%, something like that, to Israel. But how about the role of Turkey and the role, their sort of strategy? What is that? What can we say about them? Because when it comes to Gaza, they have to have some sort of understanding about Gaza and Palestinians.
Well, I'm not sure they are clear on their strategy. They've had a variety of strategies. I mean, if Erdogan's left to his own, he wants to recreate the Turkish Empire, if you will, the Ottoman Empire. And to that extent, he wants to create this alliance that stretches through the Caucasus, through Armenia, through Azerbaijan, to make Turkey the preeminent power again in the region.
Sorry for interrupting you, Larry. The concept that you've just mentioned, I think that can be dissolved in the new security architecture of the region that you
mentioned. Correct. Yeah. No, I'd agree. But then you gotta wonder: are the Turkeys, the Turks, listening to the Israelis, to the former president, maybe soon to be new president, where he identified, he says, once we take care of Iran, we're going to need to take care of Turkey. I don't, how do you get that direct of a threat, and that Turkey doesn't do everything in its power to pull the plug on Israel? I mean, the Turks continue to allow oil to flow to Israel, even though Israel is now threatening to destroy them. I mean, I don't get it. It's like the Turks have no self-respect. At that point, the Zionist thugs they've declared what they're about, so you better deal with it. So that's where Turkey they got to figure out. I'd say they're like in a sexual identity crisis. They're born male, but they keep entertaining the possibility that they may be female. So they're like a transgender crisis. Am I this? Am I that? Am I this? Am I that? Figure out what you are. If you're a nation and you got any national pride, then understand the country that represents the greatest threat to you is Israel. Nobody else.
Larry, the war in Ukraine is, there is no end. It seems that the war is going on. And what is the main issue with the war in Ukraine that you, in your opinion, will be discussed in the new meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping? And what is the issue of Ukraine that can be discussed in that meeting?
No, I think then Putin is simply going to give him an update and show about that Russia is going to expand its offense against Ukraine, and it will include attacks on Europe. I think Russia will strike targets in some of the European countries, and those countries that are producing drones, producing weapons that are being used against Russia, hitting targets inside Russia, that those European countries are going to be hit. And then we're going to be looking at the possible expansion of this war, where the NATO will then be faced with, are they going to activate Article 5? and at that point, we could be at a full-scale war between Russia and NATO. But the Russians have made it very, very clear that they're at that point. When I listened, I know Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky. He's now ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, which is, I think it's in Vienna, Austria. Ambassador Polyansky he's a measured diplomat. He's not one that freelances. He's not some major personality that gets out and just talks off the top of his head. He is when he says something about what Russia's prepared to do, he's saying that having received instructions and clearance from not only Sergei Lavrov, but from Vladimir Putin, that he is in fact expressing the policy of Russia. And in his interview with Danny Davis I believe it was on Friday, I was really sort of shocked when he made it very clear that, if these attacks persist, and basically Russia will attack and deal with the threats in Europe. So that this is not an idle threat. This is not bombast. This is that the pressure is now such that Russia is going to end this war in Ukraine and is going to end it militarily. And part of the ending of that is destroying the logistics support that's coming out of Europe, out of Germany, out of Romania, out of Poland in particular, and out of France.
But if they escalate the war, how is that going to be able for the United States? Is that possible for the United States to participate in that war? They don't have.
Yeah, well, what's the United States going to do? I mean, that means at that point we would have to pull resources that are right now focused in the Middle East. The United States cannot fight a two-front war. Now, let's be clear about that. We don't have unlimited resources in both manpower, air power, and offensive missile power. We don't have that. So the odds that the United States would want to embroil itself in a war between Russia and Europe, there'll be a lot of consternation expressed, but in terms of being able to do anything practically, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. The two wars, one on Russia's doorstep, the other one on Iran, are failing because the United States is going there fighting them. Yeah. They're not coming to the backyard of the United States fighting the United States. Nobody's willing to do that, by the way. China is not going to do that. Russia, Iran, none of these countries wanted any sort of war against the United States.
Well,
is the United States going there and,
Well, no, I don't know what you made as the thread I read, and I haven't verified that it was in fact official Iranian government policy, but some Iranian officials said basically, if the United States attacks us again, we have intercontinental ballistic missiles that can hit Washington and New York, and we'll use them. And I'm thinking, whoa! Now that would be a stunner, if and so we'll see what happens. I mean, Iran. If the United States launches a new attack on Iran, then Iran is entirely justified in doing that. It's just I don't know if they actually have the capability, or they're just talking through their hat, or So I hope we don't find out.
Because they put these limits on the range of the missiles they have by design. The former leader of Iran, supreme leader of Iran, he said that we don't need that much to go that far with the range of missiles. I don't know if they have changed that concept. They have the capabilities to increase the range.
Right. No, I know that, and that's why when I saw this statement, I thought, boy, that's a new escalation.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today.
Boy, well, we're going to see what the week brings. Hopefully by the time Colonel Wilkerson are back with you on Friday, we're still at peace, or relative peace.
I hope so.
I'll let you know if I hear anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, good shirt choice today, by the way.
Thank you. You too.
You brought your A game.
Thank you so much, Larry. See
All
you
right,
soon.
my friend. Behave yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
हेलो चेक हेलो 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 चेक हेलो 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 काट रखा हेलो हेलो चेक हेलो 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 चेक
अरे इतके उचड़े सारा यार इतने दे यार उतर जाओ सारा स्टेज का सारा थले उतर यात्रा.com से बनावांगा फिर चाहिए
तुम इसके ऊपर बैठेगा तार मिसिंग करे ना हल्ला लगो बैठ दे तुम एक बार ओए पीछे जाओ ओए बच्चा बाहर आ जाओ बाहर जाओ चलो 10वां बार बाहर जाओ 2 मिनट में खेले बाहर नहीं चलो नशा बार पीछे आ जाओ बैठो चलो उतर जाओ तार मिसिंग करे मेरा लगती बार बार इसमें तार मिसिंग का हाथ थोड़ी हरकत देखनी है मिस्टेक हुई ना एनु मोल्डिंग में करूं मेरा हाथ है ना मोल्डिंग
थोड़ा दी
आगे से थोड़ा बेस
थोड़ा ना किसको बेस
बराबर हो जाए
सही मस्ताना वो पाने